At the very beginning of time, there was nothing. No heartbeat, no breath, no cry, no laughter, only silence. And then, cutting through the void, a voice. Let there be light. This is how Genesis tells us creation itself begins, with a voice, God's voice. Tonight, as we gather for Kol Nidre, the holiest night of the year, we too uplift the power of voice. We have greeted friends. We have sung ancient melodies. We have spoken prayer. We may not be creating stars or seas, but we are creating hope, belonging, connection. And at the heart of this evening, of course, lies Kol Nidre itself, an ancient formula about words. For everything we do as a Jewish people, our traditions, our community, our very faith depends on voice. And yet, if I'm honest, I have struggled to trust my own voice this High Holy Day season. Sitting at my desk, staring at a blank page that would become this sermon, I feared the words I would speak from this bima might splinter instead of heal, might push people apart instead of drawing them together. Rabbis this season wrestled, truly wrestled, to know how to speak courageously. This is the fractured and polarized environment we are living through. And even if you are not a rabbi and you don't deliver sermons, maybe you have felt this too. Maybe you have held your tongue at the dinner table, or maybe you've stifled down your thoughts during a meeting. Or maybe you have typed a comment on social media only to delete it a moment later. We know how fragile, how dangerous, how powerful our words can be. So Kol Nidre poses a very simple question. How will we use our voices in the year to come? To wound or to heal, to break or to build, to choose death or to choose life. From the very first stories in Torah, we learn that voice is never neutral. Tomorrow morning, we'll read about Cain and Abel, the first people born into our Torah. After Cain kills his brother, God asks, "Where is your brother Abel?" Cain answers with a lie, a dodge, essentially a silence. "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" But God refuses to let this silence stand. "Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." God describes the ground itself as a mourner sobbing for a life cut short, weeping for the tragedy of humanity. It could have been so good, but in the first breath of freedom, it turned so violent so soon. The Torah here warns that silence is the sound of death. If we refuse to use our voices to affirm life, the world might just testify against us. If Cain's silence shows how words withheld can destroy, then the Shema, books later in Deuteronomy 6, shows how words proclaimed can give life. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Whereas Cain hides behind silence, the Shema demands voice, spoken loudly, proudly, out into the universe. Twice a day, when we lie down and when we rise up, we bookend our lives with this declaration. In speaking it out loud, we turn faith into action, reminding ourselves that Judaism's call is to choose life. This is why the Torah tells us again and again in so many words, you have heard it this High Holy Day season, I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore, choose life. Choosing life is the very essence of our covenant. And in a sense, the Shema then is a healing salve to Cain's deadly, painful silence much, much earlier in our Torah. The rabbis deepen this idea. Pirkei Avot teaches that the Shekhinah, God's presence, dwells when words of Torah are exchanged between people and when 10 gather in prayer. Not one lone voice mumbling to itself in the corner, but voices together, rising in tandem. Think of the holiness you have felt this entire High Holy Day season. Our voices rising as one. I'll never forget just last week when we sang Plowshare Prayer in place of Misha Berach. It's one of my favorites. Dear blessed Creator, dear Mother, dear Savior, dear Father, dear Brother, dear Holy Other. I was so immersed in our singing that I didn't at first notice the tears welling up in people's eyes. When the last note faded, I finally looked out and I saw them, faces awash with tears. A community knit together by voice and vulnerability. Holiness does not live in avoidant silence. It lives in conversation, or like here, like tonight, in chorus. And yet, interestingly enough, Kol Nidre surprises us. Usually, when we lift our voices in chorus, we do so as affirmation, the acknowledgement that we stand together in shared experience and faith. Tonight, though, we began not with affirmation, but with annulment, a communal release of words not yet even spoken. Kol Nidre, all vows. We regret them, and for all of them we repent. Let all of them be discarded and forgiven, abolished and undone. Why? Kol Nidre is Judaism's paradoxical confession that while words can create and heal, they can also bind and wound. And once a year we must release ourselves from their grip because, again, our tradition knows that speech is powerful. Tonight, it insists we remember. The problem is, too often, we forget. We as a community saw how, after October 7th, language itself faltered. As Shuki Taylor and Shlomit Naim Naor wrote in a Jewish Journal article this week, at first, many of us lacked adequate words to describe the horror of the events of October 7th, or the intensity of our responses to them. Terms that once offered comfort or cohesion suddenly felt fragile, divisive, or even dangerous. Familiar phrases no longer carried shared resonance. Instead, they became contested terrain, provoking confusion, trauma, or defensiveness, depending on who invoked them and in what context. In such an environment, silence, not only around the war in Israel, but around all the tensions of our time, often feels safer than saying what we truly believe. That's why I spent a lot of this week just staring at a blank page in preparation for tonight. We fear our voices will be misunderstood, or worse, weaponized. And so, like Cain, we risk silence. Never mind that silence comes with its own cost. It erodes trust. It deepens divisions and isolation. It leaves us feeling helpless just when the world and our Jewish community needs us most. As Louis Menand recently wrote in The New Yorker, the answer to our fractured world cannot be to stop talking. It has to be to keep talking, to insist on more speech, better speech, believing that in the exchange of words lies the possibility of progress. So, how do we reclaim our voices for healing? Perhaps we can go back to basics with gentle, affirming conversation. There's a rabbinic story about the kind and patient Rabbi Hillel in our Talmud. A man bets that he can provoke Rabbi Hillel to anger. Again and again, he taunts him with mocking questions. Why are Babylonians' heads so round? And why are Africans' feet so wide? Each time, Rabbi Hillel takes a breath. He looks at this young man and says, "My child, you have asked a great question." His calm voice is the teaching. The power of voice lies not only in content, but in tone, not only in what we say, but how we say it, because that's also a part of using our voices, not only to speak with courage and conviction, which is important, but also to hear and respond to others with generosity. David Brooks, in his book, How to Know a Person, reminds us that every conversation has two levels. There is the official conversation, the words that are exchanged about work, the environment, politics, whatever it might be. And then there is the actual conversation, the emotions, the feelings that are stirring underneath. Every conversation is an opportunity to ask, am I making you feel safe or threatened, seen or unseen? Brooks writes, it is the volley of these underlying emotions that will determine the success or failure of the conversation. Too often we speak to win rather than to understand. We leap to conclusions instead of truly listening. But what if every word we spoke and every word we heard became a chance to build trust, to affirm dignity, and to make another human being feel seen? What if even the most irritating conversations could be opportunities to grow? This is the deeper lesson that Kol Nidre draws us back to. And sometimes words actually fail. And Judaism teaches that voice alone, without words, can also heal. The shofar is the clearest example. The rabbis say the Truah blast, 9 broken notes, should sound like sobbing. The shofar is not melody or speech. It is the raw cry of the soul when language collapses. And this cry heals us in 2 ways. For us as individuals, it allows us to release, to wail, to let go of what we are holding inside. And on a communal level, it binds us to one another. We know this kind of cry. It's the sound of a community coming together with tears falling through as people hug each other. It is what we felt in the days after October 7th when we gathered in this very sanctuary amidst candlelight and mournful poetry, and we held each other close and we wept at our collective anguish. And our tradition dares to say that such a cry moves even God. There's a midrash that teaches that when Israel sounds the shofar, God gets up from the throne of judgment and moves right on over to the throne of compassion. And sometimes the voice heals not in the sanctuary, not at the synagogue, but in the most unexpected of places. A few months ago, my grandmother was in the hospital. One day, when we feared it might be our last with her, she motioned for my husband and I to come sing her Misha Berach. She couldn't speak. Her body was tethered to all sorts of tubes, and it was hidden behind a big plastic mask. Yet as we sang, she lifted her eyes up toward us, and something in that room shifted. In that moment, Misha Berach was not just a melody set to words. It was creation itself, a light piercing the darkness. Afterwards, her doctor entered brisk and clinical. I guess he had heard our prayer. "Are you two rabbis?" "Yes, I serve at Temple Emmanuel." His face lit up. "That's where I went to preschool." In an instant, he was not only a doctor, he was a fellow Jew. He was a link in our shared story in my community. He wasn't just a distant figure, a part of this time in our lives anymore. He was family. And I got the sense that my grandmother was in good hands, and she may even be online with us tonight. Hello. Friends, listen to the chorus of our tradition. God calls light into being. Abel's blood cries out from the ground. Israel proclaims the Shema. The shofar shakes the heavens. Prayer transforms even the darkest of moments into connection and comfort and light. Tonight, let us annul not only our vows, but our silence. That habit of shrinking back, keeping quiet, leaving words unsaid. This year, let us speak with courage and with conviction and with compassion. And when others dare to use their voices, let us listen with Hillel's depth and generosity. As we rise and sing Aleinu in just a moment, lift your voices, not just in prayer, but in determination that you will speak up because you have something important to say, that you will sing out because we need to hear you, and that when words just don't suffice, you will allow yourself, give yourself that space to cry from the soul. At the very beginning of time, God's voice pierced the silence. Let there be light. Tonight, Kol Nidre reminds us our voices too can pierce the silence. For in the human voice, in your voice and in my voice, lies the choice to wound or to heal, to break or to build, to choose death or to choose life. Gamar Chatima Tova.